Hey now, 2 videos a day, 2 reviews a day, so let's get to it. What's up guys, it's your boy Samoan Fan 101, and today we are on number 2, the second film of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, released actually later in the same year. Released June of 2008 in a lot of various regions. This is The Incredible Hulk. Now, a little bit of backstory on this film. First of all, as far as I know, Avi Arad did not, this was the last, okay, so Avi Arad was, just want to make sure. Avi Arad, this was the last film Avi Arad worked on in the MCU. Since then, he's pretty much stayed out of the MCU altogether. Sticking to, you know, like I said, the first 2 films was mostly with Avi Arad and Kevin Feige. And, yeah, you know, it was better to get rid of Avi Arad considering his track record being pretty spotty. Anyway, a little bit of a backstory on this film. I can't talk about this film without talking about the film that came 5 years before it, Ang Lee's Hulk in 2003. Just gonna say right now, and I know some people are gonna disagree with me, but I personally enjoyed Ang Lee's Hulk more than I did this Hulk. Not that this is a horrible film, because it's not. But this Hulk, to me, demonstrated that while it took some aspects of the Ang Lee Hulk film that didn't work and made him better, it took a lot more aspects from the original, from the first film, that were not as good, so to speak. I'll get to that in a second, in a little bit here. But this film, this film was a follow-up in a weird way, because if you remember, if you watched Hulk, you'll know that the ending took place with Hulk, or Bruce Banner, who was then played by Eric Bana. That after the events of the film, he went to Brazil, where he's basically been staying out of America and basically staying very clear of the U.S. military. In this film, it starts out the same way, with him being in Brazil. And as well as, it's briefly mentioned, but it is mentioned that there's a 5-year time gap between when Bruce became the Hulk and the events of this film, which of course there's a 5-year time gap between Hulk and Incredible Hulk, but they actually kind of retconned it, because it's not a reboot because it doesn't completely start over. It's not a sequel because the various events of this film and how Bruce came to be the Hulk are very different from how we saw in Ang Lee's Hulk. It's also not a remake, because obviously it does continue certain events after the first Hulk film. So it's kind of like a retcon. It may have happened one way, it may have happened another. Who cares? Hulk smash. Well, that's all well and good, but what about the movie? Well, let me get into that. This film had a $150 million budget, which was $30 million more than an Iron Man, which probably was necessary considering it's probably more cost-effective, or more costly, I should say, to make a CG Hulk rather than a CG Iron Man suit. So, okay, what do we have here? What's the plot? Well, plot's a little bit easier to explain than the Iron Man film, believe it or not. So basically, and what's told actually probably one of the best scenes of the movie, extremely well, is when they play up how the Hulk came about through flashbacks in the opening sequence. So basically, the opening credits of the film, that's all flashback to what happened and how Bruce Banner, who in this movie is played by Edward Norton, came to be the Hulk, and how that thing came about, including a very cool homage to the original Hulk TV show that starred, God, what's his name? Bill Bixby, who sadly died in 1993 of some kind of cancer. I forget which one. Anyway, After that, we see him, he's experimenting on himself, he becomes the Hulk, he injures Betty, and he's on the run. 5 years later, of course, he works at a soda factory, or a bottling factory, I should say, in Rio de Janeiro. Of course, that's in Brazil. He's in contact with a man by the name of Mr. Blue, and they're working together in order to find a cure for him. After a certain plant fails, it's decided that he should send him his blood in order to figure out the DNA and see if they can do it through experimentation to cure his gamma sickness. However, during his time in Rio, Bruce Banner cuts himself, and a piece of blood gets on a bottle, and of course the blood is his gamma has his gamma genes kind of onto it. It's discovered that he's in Rio because the soda is drunk by Stan Lee because, well, Marvel. That's all I gotta say, because, well, it's a Marvel film. It's gotta have Stan Lee. So, General Ross, who's been hunting this guy and has lost contact with him for the past 5 months or so, because he has not transformed in 5 months, finds him and has a SWAT team basically come in and try to take him in, including Emil Blonsky, who in the comics is Russian, and they admit, and they do say that he is Russian in this film, but he was raised as a Britishman because, well, he's played by Tim Roth, and most likely Tim Roth did not want to do a Russian accent, so they just explained that off real quick. That's my guess. Anyway, while they're hunting him, Banner transforms into the Hulk and it attacks them while they're trying to trank him, and he escapes. He returns to the university where he and Betty Ross both were experimented at, and most likely they teach. Betty's dating another person named Leonard Samson, who is a character in the comics, and I think a major one, or at least partially, but doesn't really do much here in this film, sadly. At one point, even though he tries to stay away, he meets up with Betty and gets the data from all their gamma research before it was taken away by the military. Thankfully, Betty Ross had it on a little flash drive. During this, not long after this, Bruce is attacked by the military at the university, where of course he transforms into the Hulk and starts attacking them. After which he and Betty both escape the military. Of course, Betty, in case nobody knows, Betty Ross is in fact General Ross's daughter, and she has or had a relationship with Bruce, so of course that complicates things. They escape. They go to Samuel Stern, who is in fact Mr. Blue, and give him the data, and they're able to find a way to either cure him or suppress the gamma gene. While this is all happening, Emil Blonsky, who before the events of the second encounter, because remember, he encountered the Hulk in Rio, and he encountered him again at the university. Before he encountered him at the university, he took a super soldier serum. Now, as it turned out, the gamma radiation that Bruce Banner was working with was actually early stages of a super soldier serum that the military was trying to work on. Bruce, however, did not know this, and when he experimented on himself, that's when he hulked the hell out. And Ross did admit to Blonsky that, hey, we do have some very promising super soldier serum that we developed. So basically, an experimental super soldier serum was given to Blonsky, enhances speed, enhances strength, and healing. But what happened was, what's happening is the serum is impairing his judgment, and his skeleton is getting a little bit more morphed. I'll explain that in a bit. I'll get to that. I'll get to that a little bit later, I should say. Now, the third time they encounter the Hulk was after Bruce and Betty meet Samuel Stearns, who, of course, in fact, is Mr. Blue, and they help do something to the gene. However, he replicated the blood that Bruce sent him so that he could test it out, and and Blonsky comes in and takes Banner, who of course did not transform into the Hulk that time. However, Blonsky, who's by this time has been completely obsessed with power and with the Hulk, he forces Stearns to give him a sample of Bruce's blood, and of course he turns into the Abomination character from the comics. He wreaks havoc along Harlem in New York, and Bruce has to basically control it in a sense and put his own life at jeopardy so he can turn it into the Hulk and fight the Abomination. Chaos ensues, action spills out all over the place. General Ross and Betty almost die, and through some weird means, maybe not weird, but through some certain means, the Hulk defeats the Abomination finally at the end. And of course, we see the end as Hulk escapes New York. He flees the military, and we never see Betty Ross ever again after this film, so sad. And we see him in British Columbia, Bella Coola, British Columbia. In fact, they said it in the film. And he seemingly is able to control the Hulk as he kind of willed himself into it. And the ending of the film, the last scene of the movie, Ross is at a bar drinking his loss away because, you know, he's not exactly in the best place after a giant failure. And Tony Stark from Iron Man, of course, comes in and says that, look, we're putting a team together, and that's how we end. Of course, alluding to the Avengers. So, what do I think of this film? Well, it's really weird because clearly it's not as good as Iron Man. I'm going to say it right now. It's not as good as Iron Man. And that actually showed in the box office because Iron Man made over $500 million, about $580-something million. I'm looking at the number right now. It had a budget of $150. The box office total was $263.4 million. I'm going to tell you right now, that's not that good of a number. I'm not saying they didn't make money off of it because, of course, they got to put in advertising. And so maybe there was some kind of break-even point that they did reach. But the fact is, it didn't make a whole lot of money, and looking at the film, it's not exactly hard to see why. It's an enjoyable ride, but one that has several different plot holes, or maybe not plot holes, but several different things about it that just doesn't work. Let's get into what does work. What does work? Edward Norton as Bruce Banner is probably the best performance of the movie. Not exactly surprising, considering the fact that at some point Edward Norton rewrote the script. So there's a good chance he kind of rewrote it, if anything, to make his character strong, although he did change a few other aspects of the film. So you had Edward Norton as Banner, who does a great job in the role. And I don't know if he always looks like this, if he's just like a method actor, but Edward Norton actually looked like a scientist. The one weakness I will say about Eric Bana in Ang Lee's Hulk is that he didn't really look sciencey enough. Edward Norton, he was skinny enough, he was small enough, he looked like a scientist. He didn't look like an athlete, which is kind of what Eric Bana looks like. To a lesser extent, is what Mark Ruffalo looks like. So that I will admit. In terms of aesthetically, he does look the part. Lou Ferrigno provides the voice as the Hulk. He also has a cameo appearance in this film as a security guard. Very much how in Ang Lee's Hulk, he was also a security guard, who was even talking to Stan Lee, which was funny. That was in the Ang Lee's Hulk. Another performance I liked in this film, this is entirely on the actor, not on the writing. Tim Roth as Emil Blonsky and Abomination. I thought he did a good job acting in the role, but the character's not written that well, and I'll get to that in a bit. But Tim Roth, credit to Tim Roth, he put his all into this performance, and he's actually legitimately enjoyable. He's actually enjoyable to watch. And it's sad because the character's not written that. Again, I'll get to that in a bit. You had Ty Burrell as Leonard Samson. He's not in the film that much. He's barely in the film, actually. But he is likable for the brief scene that he's in. Tim Blake Nelson plays Samuel Stearns. Of course, he's the biologist who helped suppress or did whatever to the gamma gene in Bruce Banner. He's over the top, But to be fair, we've seen Tim Blake Nelson be in so many stern, serious roles. It's kind of nice to see Tim Blake Nelson as the over-the-top scientist who is just a regular guy. He's not this overly like government professional who talks like this and is always so serious. No, he's just like a guy like you and me, who's overreactionary and also is very interested in the Hulk gene and everything that, and because he feels that because there's no disease, that it can't be diseased, he feels that there's a way to exploit it, also to get a Nobel Prize, but also give some people legitimate, some legitimate cures and stuff, is what I'm trying to say. And of course, Robert Downey Jr., for the brief scene that he's in the Hulk film, he also does a pretty good job. Now, the weakness. Now, okay, well, actually, let's get into some more strengths, because the acting's not all this film had to offer. The special effects were on point at $150 million. The special effects better be pretty good. Maybe some people might see a little bit of aging now, but for me personally, I think the CG for the most part still holds up. For both the Abomination and the Hulk, they still, for the most part, hold up. There's maybe one moment here or there where it's like, okay, this could have been improved on, but for the most part, the effects really do hold up. The action sequences are good, but not good. I'll get to that in a bit. And, the one thing I did not mention in my Iron Man review is the music. I thought the music in that film was great. The music in this film is actually even better. The music, I really like some of the tunes. At one point, you even hear the old credits theme to the Incredible Hulk TV show, and even the Incredible Hulk Returns movie. You hear like do 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 while the old Bill Bixby banner is walking alongside the street. Same thing here. There's a moment where you hear the music, and I'm like, okay, that I noticed. That was actually pretty good. So clearly there was another homage to the original Hulk film. Sorry, there's like a bug here. So those are some of the strengths. What are some of the weaknesses? Well, let's get into the biggest weakness of this film, and that's General Ross. Look, I like William Hurt as an actor, and I did very much enjoy Sam Elliott as General Ross, as well as just the General Ross character in the Ang Lee film. I'm going to say right now, I did not give a shit for General Ross at all in this film. He was just a complete asshole. Now, you could say that the character was written that way to make the plight for Bruce feel more strong, but here's the problem. The problem is that at some point you're supposed to see exactly what this guy sees. For example, in the Ang Lee film, Sam Elliott, not the Sam Elliott, the Ross character, he can be an extremist. He does have his faults, and to be fair, he does acknowledge that he has faults, and you kind of get why he doesn't trust Bruce because of the experiences he had with Bruce's father, and he just can't help but see the same parallels that Bruce took in the road that Bruce took compared to David Banner in the Ang Lee film. And so it makes the character more three-dimensional, at least in a way where you're not exactly rooting for Ross, but you totally understand where he's coming from. In this film, though, William Hurt, and nothing against William Hurt, but he did not give his A-game performance in this film. There were times where he did decent enough, but he just wasn't that good. And on top of that, Ross, the way the character was written, he was written like a complete asshole. Just say it right now, he was written like an asshole. He was just a complete douchebag. There was nothing likable about him. He undermines his daughter constantly. He never really listened to her opinion at all. He mocks pretty much anybody. He mocks both the men that Betty, likes. He clearly does not like Bruce because he sees him as just a tool and not a person. He does not like the Leonard Samson character, who kind of stood up to him and says, like, yeah, I know you're full of shit. I know you're not going after her because she's in danger. You're going after her because you want the Hulk. Well, he doesn't really know that. but he knows that he's lying. He knows that Betty's safety is not his #1 concern. And to hear that, and to know that, yeah, the guy is full of shit, I'm like, there is nothing likable about this character whatsoever. There's nothing likable, there's nothing redeemable, there's nothing about him that screams, I should feel for this character. Which is what they've done before, and to be fair, while he's still a dick, you at least understand his point of view in Captain America Civil War and even Avengers Infinity War. He's still a dick, but you at least understand his point of view. And this film, this is the one film that Ross was in the MCU, that is just a complete fucking numbskull. He's just a douchebag. That's the best way I can say it. He's just a fucking douchebag. There's nothing likable about him. There's nothing about him that screams, I want to feel for this character. He's like the, I don't even want to get into it anymore. Let's get on to something else. Speaking of Ross, let's get to his daughter, Betty Ross. This was a little less bad, and Liv Tyler did try, but it was clear that the direction for her just wasn't there. Betty Ross, as you know, she definitely alleviates things. She definitely gives a more upbeat thing to it. But the problem is that the character is not written the best, and most of this has to do with the fact that she doesn't really do all that much. The only thing she really does is give Bruce the data he needs in order to give to Samuel Stern, and the other thing is kind of be like mediator between Hulk and Bruce when he is hulked out. But even then, it's not used that much. And really, she's really kind of, in a sense, she's kind of a plot device. And it sucks that I'm saying this, because I did like Liv Tyler in this movie. I did like her performance. She did try. It's just that the character's not written the best. And it's not Liv Tyler's fault. It's just not the right, it just wasn't the right time. And those lips, I noticed how big those lips are. Those lips were hulking out. Okay, back on topic. So she's not bad, but her character just isn't that good. It's not her fault. It's just the way the character was written. And there are moments that I did like the character, but there were other moments where I'm like, okay, she could be doing something, or they could be doing more with her, but they didn't. What are some other things? Some other details? Because I know there are others. Oh yeah, here's one. A major one I had a problem with. Two things about the Hulk. First of all, and I heard this once in NecroVMX's review, because NecroVMX reviewed the Incredible Hulk a while ago. Sorry, it looks like I'm getting hiccups. I don't know why. I've noticed this, and I noticed this watching the movie too. Hulk is not really so much a Hulk as he is a big, strong man. I'll get to that. I'll get to why. Hang on. And you're probably wondering, like, what do I mean by that? Well, have you noticed in this film how many weapons he uses? In the beginning, it was fine, and to be fair, the first action sequence of the Hulk was actually very well done. The way it was shot, the cinematography for him being kept in the shadows in Rio, that was very well done. And he just threw shit. Not because he was dead to defend himself, but because, hey, here's an object, I'm gonna throw it. Bam. That I didn't mind. But then as the film went on, you start to realize the guy is not as, maybe not invincible, but not as strong as he should be. And I'm thinking about it. Think about it. He uses during both action sequences at the university and at Harlem in New York. He uses a car, a round object thing that he throws, two like hard, tough metal shields, another car, this time a police car. He rips it in half, and then chains. The Hulk uses a lot of weapons in this film. Here's the shitty thing. You don't really see him punch anything. You see him throw one punch. You see him throw one punch at the Abomination. That's it. In terms of punching, that's all you get in this film. And he only ever throws one kick. Same thing at Emil Blonsky at the university action scene. That's all you ever see. That's all you ever see him punch or kick anything. Everything else, or most of the other stuff, he's only using weapons. You know, even when they were throwing shit, one of the biggest strengths of the Hulk in the Ang Lee film and in the films with Mark Ruffalo is that whenever he did use a weapon, it was always a weapon of convenience. It was never a weapon of necessity. He never needed it to protect himself. It was always like, oh hey, look, I'm going to throw something. Boof. That's exactly what it was. He didn't need to use weapons to fight people. He had his fucking fists. He could just punch you and your head would come clean off. But no, he used weapons. That to me never made sense. I'm like, why are you using weapons? You're the goddamn Hulk. You don't need weapons. You are a weapon. I understand maybe using something every once in a while. Just like I said, a weapon of convenience, not a weapon of necessity. That I thought was a flaw. As well as the fact that bullets seem to hurt him. They don't penetrate him. They don't, like, make him bleed. But you can tell he's bothered by the bullets. And to be fair, the Ang Lee film had the same problem. So, to rip on one film, I gotta rip on the other for doing the same thing. There were moments in both films when bullets seemed to bother them. I'm like, you're the Hulk. It shouldn't even faze you at this point. Another thing, speaking of the Hulk, I gotta mention this. This I have to mention. They changed the rules of the Hulk constantly in this film. For whatever reason, for him to transform into the Hulk, his heartbeat has to go to 200 beats a minute for any reason. So yes, having sex, and to be fair, the scene was kind of funny. Having sex can make him literally Hulk the hell out. I don't think it was a bug, but they got it anyway. Yeah, having sex can totally make him Hulk out. That I thought was funny, but aside from that, it's just not really that, interesting when all you have to do in order to become the Hulk is get to 200 beats a minute. Whatever happened to hulking out because of anger, or because you were mad, or no, none of that. There's none of that in this film. It is all purely heartbeats. And that, I think, is completely, 100% weak. I think that is totally weak. That, and like I said, they changed the films. They didn't change the film. They changed the rules as the film goes on, adding a layer of inconsistency. First of all, they do the 200 beats a minute thing near the beginning when the Rio thing happens. Then later on, we don't see, now granted we don't have a watch, so it doesn't go to 200 beats a minute, but we see him automatically become the Hulk when he sees Betty because Betty tries running at him at the university and she gets tackled to the ground by the military, trying to stop her. And he gets angry at that, but like, whoa, wait a minute. I thought it had nothing to do with anger. I thought everything had to do with your heartbeat. I mean, what the hell does that sense does that even make? And then they do the same thing later in the film when he's fighting the Abomination, and he gets angry because Betty's in danger, and then he starts getting more strength and getting stronger because of his anger. Even though earlier in the film, and they did it again later, when he was captured by the military at Samuel Stern's lab at his venue, and they make the 200 beats a minute thing again. Like, they make that point. And again, they make the point when they're trying to have sex and it just doesn't work out because, reasons. They change the rules. That is extremely inconsistent. And I hate to harp on this, but it is inconsistent when your film can't even keep up the consistency of something very simple. He gets angry, Hulk smash. That's all it should be. It shouldn't be this heartbeat thing that they made up. That I thought was completely stupid. Speaking of the writing, Emil Blonsky. Like I said, I very much enjoyed Tim Roth's performance as Emil Blonsky. I don't even mind the fact that he had an English accent because they made mention the fact that, yeah, he was Russian born, but he was raised in England. So that I don't mind. What I do mind, however, has to do entirely with the progression of the character. He starts out as a guy that you feel for, you kind of like, and you understand his plight and why he has all these questions about the Hulk and wanting to go after him. That you understand. Sorry, there's like a hole in my chair. I gotta cut that, actually. So don't rip that out. That you understand. What you don't understand, at least initially, is his progression to be the main villain. Because for most of the film, Ross is the villain, and Emil is kind of Blanc is kind of the guy below him. In this film, until of course later in the third act. So they give him the super soldier serum. It does hamper his judgment, but not so much that he can't listen to orders. But he does become obsessed with the Hulk. Then he gets treated to more of the super soldier serum, which changes his bone structure as you see in a film, and clearly it changes his mindset and makes him more volatile. Here's the problem with that. Even though it makes him more volatile, that is not at one point mentioned in the film at all, that this guy is having a progression and what effect it's going to have on his mind. That is completely up to the viewer to decide. But here's the thing. They showed us. That's one of the things. I know there's things called show and don't tell, and you have to figure it out for yourself. But that's for other scenes, like, did the top fall over in Inception? Or what was in the briefcase in Pulp Fiction? A similar thing here. This is one of the things that they have to explain to us. What happened with this character? They never explained to us one bit. What happened? We can infer what happened, but they never explained to us exactly what happened to his head. Like, what happened up here? What effect did it have on his mind? They never once bothered to explain that. And that, I thought, was the biggest problem with the Tim Roth character, the Emil Blanc character. There's no real progression for it. It just kind of jumps from one thing to another. And while I like the performance, the character's not written all that well. So yeah, that's my review. With that said, I still did enjoy the film. Despite its many flaws, I did enjoy the film. I give this film a 6 out of 10. It's not as good as the Ang Lee film, and it's definitely one of the weakest entries of the MCU, and clearly the box office money showed. But it still can be an enjoyable film. It's not amazing. It's just okay. That's the best way I could say it. It's just okay. 6 out of 10. See you next time, guys, when I review Iron Man 2 on this channel. Maybe later tonight, maybe not. Until next time, guys, peace.